So some of your own backbenchers are saying that this is bonkers and it's a waste of money trying to prop up the Eurozone. What do you say to that?
Well, obviously I don't agree. I think it's very important that we have a stable world economy. That's important for jobs in Britain, and a stable world economy needs strong institutions like the IMF. And actually it's because we've taken tough action in Britain, we can be part of the solution, not part of the debt problem. And actually I've been quite heartened that I've got a lot of backbench MPs have come out and said they support this decision. Also, the chair of the Treasury Select Committee has come out and said it's an essential decision. So I think the parliamentary support is there. More importantly, I think the public understand that Britain has got to engage with the world and sort out the world's problems, because if we don't, then we are going to face real problems here in Britain.
Why not put it to a vote then in Parliament?
Well, as I say, we've already got parliamentary authority for making a contribution to the IMF. We've spent the last year explaining to Parliament what we're going to do. There will be many discussions, I'm sure, in Parliament about this. But parliamentary opinion has, from what I can see in the reaction to the announcement we've made, has been pretty supportive.
This is clearly about the euro, though, isn't it? I know you're trying to say it's about IMF resources in general, but this scale of extra bailout is required now that the IMF is bailing out industrialised countries.
Well, the Eurozone programmes that the IMF has undertaken in Ireland, in Portugal, these have been big programmes, and these are big economies relative to many others in the world. But the IMF is a global institution. It has 53 programmes, 53 countries it's helping, of which 3 are Eurozone countries. But no, undoubtedly, the Eurozone problems put a huge strain on the world economy, have had a real impact on Britain. And as I say, you can either pull over the bed covers and pretend those problems don't exist, or we can engage with those problems, require more of the Europeans, which is what we've done, and make sure that the international institutions are strong enough to deal with whatever is thrown at them.
It seems like the Americans don't think that the Europeans have done enough. You used to think that, and now you do.
Well, first of all, the Americans do help in a very big way, in a way that no other country in the world can. They've got the world's reserve currency, the dollar, and they swap dollars for euros, and they are directly exposed as a result to problems in the Eurozone. What I'm talking about here is making a loan from Britain to the IMF. That's a loan we get back with interest. No one has ever lost money lending money to the IMF. And we do it alongside Japan, Singapore, Australia, all sorts of other countries around the world who understand too, like us, that you need a strong IMF.
Well, some will argue that at a time when you've had to raise taxes somewhat on British grannies, why are we bailing out Spanish, Greek grannies?
Well, they're completely different things. I mean, first of all, I have frozen, not raised taxes, frozen age-related allowances, and I think that was the right decision. And by the way, that's part of a budget that was delivered a tax cut to 24 million working people. Second, a loan to the IMF does not add to our debt, does not add to our deficit. We get a liquid asset, to use the technical phrase, in return. It comes out of our foreign exchange reserves. So this is not money that could be used for cutting taxes or increasing public spending in Britain. It is different. And as I say, it's basically a question everyone has to ask themselves. Does Britain want to play its part in trying to sort out problems that have a direct impact on the British economy? If we don't want to do that, then you have to accept there will be an impact on the British economy, British jobs will be lost and we'll be worse off. And I think a serious government, a Chancellor who takes his responsibilities seriously, must engage with those issues and do the right thing.
This has been a brutal month for you, frankly. Pasty tax, granny tax, caravan tax, charity tax. Many elements of your budget seem to have unravelled on closer inspection. Does it look like a shambles from where you're standing?
Well, I've been the first to accept that the headlines haven't been great. But I don't think the economics have been bad. I think actually the policies have not only held up, but people now say, hold on, here is a country, Britain, that is cutting its business taxes, sorting out its income tax to make it competitive, giving a tax cut to working people across the country. And what I find here in Washington is people look at Britain as an example of a country that has got its act together, dealt with arguably bigger debt problems than almost any other country in the world. Made itself more competitive, and the budget was a very important part of that.
But you had that before the budget, and in the budget you cut the 50p tax, and then you made a series of unpopular decisions that have evoked a response from almost every interest group in Britain. you can't say that that's a success, politically at least.
Well, I think in the end, good politics follows good economics. And I am not in, as the Chancellor Exchequer, a daily opinion poll contest and a daily popularity contest. I'll tell you what I am engaged in a daily contest with the rest of the world to make Britain competitive, to bring jobs to Britain. And ultimately, my responsibility to the British people is to do what is necessary to get the British economy moving, not to write tomorrow's newspaper headlines or to write the Channel 4 News headlines. And I think when people take a step back and examine what the budget really did, like, for example, a massive tax cut for working people, like, for example, cuts in business taxes, and see that, they will realise that we are doing the right thing.
Even one of your closest allies, Lord Ashcroft, is saying that the Conservatives not just heading in the wrong direction, they're not sure which direction you're heading. He said, including himself, he thinks that. Is the problem with you? Or are you combining the job of Chancellor in a financial crisis with being Chief Strategist, and that's just too much?
It's, as I say, good politics follows good economics. That's my personal belief as a politician, but also as the Chancellor. And my responsibility, first and foremost, is to taking the right economic decisions. And I knew going into this budget that cutting the top rate of income tax, was not a particularly easy thing to do politically, but it's the right thing to do economically, and virtually everyone in the world who looks at the British economy acknowledges that. So I haven't ducked the difficult decisions. I've not ducked them in the 2 years I've been doing this job. Again, the easy short-term political route would have been to avoid taking difficult decisions to cut public spending, but I've taken those on. So I'm always prepared to do the difficult things, even if they don't deliver the ideal newspaper headline the next day, if I'm convinced that they're the right things long-term for the British economy.
Given construction numbers, you must be worried that GDP numbers are going to come in negative next week, confirming a recession.
But I'm not an economic forecaster because I took away that power from the British Chancellor and gave it to an independent body, the Office for Budget Responsibility. So I'm not going to forecast next week's GDP numbers, but if you look at the data we have had in the week gone past, actually unemployment fell. We had some good retail sales figures as well that exceeded expectations. So, there are good positive signs out there in the British economy, but of course there are also huge challenges, the debts we inherited, the problems in the Eurozone, which we've been talking about in this interview, the high oil price, which is something people have been talking about here in Washington as well. So yeah, of course, there are tough economic challenges out there, but in the end the question is Britain getting its act together? Is Britain doing the right thing? And most people looking at Britain from around the world say, there is a country that has got its act together, doing the right thing, and actually leading by example.
Do you think the people who say that austerity's gone a bit too far, around Europe, for example, are they right?
Well, first of all, when it comes to Britain, I think that argument is now completely won. In other words, the argument that we had to deal with our debts. And those who say Britain should ease off on dealing with its debts, I think are now on the margins of the debate. And frankly, if a Chancellor came to this meeting of the IMF here in Washington and said, you know what, Britain's abandoning its debt plan, I mean, suddenly Britain would be the issue everyone was talking about, and British bailouts from the IMF would be the thing people were talking about. So I think we've got the right policy. For the rest of Europe, look, countries like Spain and Italy face some very, very difficult decisions, but they've got to make themselves competitive, and they've got to win the confidence of international bond markets. They've got to be able to fund their own debts, and that means getting their public finances in order.
Thanks, Chancellor.